myself. Hello. You're not late.
We're getting set up. It's the first time with you sitting in that chair.
Yeah, it's a little different right here. But no, you're not late. I'm just slowly getting into this just chill vibes, chill music. Let me know if the audio is okay. I guess we can get started. It's 1:30 now. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, you can follow along if you like, if you have Blender installed. But we're gonna go through today, and let me take these off. I can't hear myself. All right. So we're gonna go through today, and make Majesty, our newest latest pin, into a 3D pin in Blender. Alright, cool. The audio is great. Awesome. Audio.
I'm trying to post on this.
Post on the thing? Okay. Alright.
Story.
Alright.
It takes time. Come on.
Alright.
Don't pick on me.
Alright, so hopefully everything's gonna go smoothly because I am still a novice at Blender, but generally I have knowledge about 3D programs and they kind of all work similar. And I did practice yesterday, so we're gonna have something happen today. See. Yeah. All right. So we'll just start out with Illustrator right here. So this is where Alex finishes up her design, and right now, and she sets up the 3D of the Illustrator file for 3D for me, so I can render it out. But in general, what our goal is with 3D renders at first is to provide some mock-ups for the manufacturer, so it's easier for them to understand what we want. Of course, we can also use it for promotional marketing, I suppose, but generally we don't do that just because we want to see the final product as the marketing for the marketing thing. But what this helps us with is figuring out how the pin will look with somewhat realistic reflections and somewhat realistic colors and lighting and stuff. So sometimes the colors for Pantone um, in 3D, which it's not incorrect. It's just how it's going to look in real life, and you need to adjust for it. So that's why it's helpful. Now I'm going to use Blender because the software we generally use is Cinema 4D, and that's this is free use, so it's easier for most of the Enamel Pin community members. So.
Oh,
yeah.
Do you want to mention a little bit the basics of how the Illustrator file needs to be set up, and just so they know what?
Yeah. I'm gonna get
how it needs to be separated. We can do another one specifically how to do the file.
Yeah.
But just the basic steps.
So one thing that's good about Blender is that it requires SVG files rather than Illustrator files, which it's a scalable vector graphic type file that can be created out of other cheaper vector apps. So it's not that you have to use Illustrator, but we're kind of used to using Illustrator, so it's easier for us. So I'll show you let's get started here. Show layers. We have layers panel. Oh, there we go. So each shape or each color, generally, even the metal is counted as color in an interesting way in here. So we give each color its own layer. So I'll turn it off and on. So this is skin, and hairs. In this case, the hair is white, so you can see I can click on it. It's there. There are shapes there. So you need those shapes specifically even if you're doing white. You need shapes for the 3D to work correctly. And let me. Okay, it's working. All right. So we also kind of signify recessed areas. So in enamel pins, sometimes you want to have recessed areas. So signify that with a different shade of gold in this case. So that's its own layer. So if I turn off these layers, like now you can see that how it's also cutting out the shape of the metal out of the skin and all that. So it's just flattened out vector of sorts. Okay, so from here, you have to save out each of these colors as an SVG file for Blender to import into Blender. So we start out with the way I do it generally is that I make a copy of my of the file that Alex provides me, and then I just delete the layers and save out each layer separately every single time. One thing I want to mention, you want to make sure that the artboard it's close to the pin because it kind of gets wonky in Blender if you have too much white space around it. You'll see when I show it to you what I mean, but if you have too much white space, it doesn't hug the corners. Like you want it to be as close to the pin without touching the pin, pretty much. It doesn't matter what size it is because we are going to scale it in 3D to a relative size. So just approximating it. So, all right. So let me just show a process. So I'll just, delete these layers. And yes, I want to delete the layers. So we only have the skin layer by itself. We'll check it by going to outline mode. So it's only the skin. And then what we do is file, save as, and then have a separate folder. Let's see how I did it. Okay, yeah. So we can create a new folder in here and just call it SVG, Scalable Vector Graphic Folder. And instead of Illustrator file, we're going to do SVG. And I generally name every single thing that I render or save out. So this one is skin. So skin for the pen. Yeah, do let us know if you have any questions at all because I might go a little too fast. So let me know if I need to slow down or back up a bit. Because I forget sometimes some simple steps some people don't understand, or sometimes it's a little too complicated. So starting out here. So you just save out each color as a file by itself. So save that. Just leave everything as default. Okay. And then generally I just do Command Z and undelete everything and then do that again, but just for the delete that. We'll go through this whole process. Sure it's there with the outline mode. Outline mode shortcut for me is Command Y. So you make sure the shapes are there. So save as, change to hair. And hair SVG. Save. Again, Command Z, and same thing with recessed. Delete. Y. Save as. Let's see. Recessed. Metal. Just to make sure spell everything out because it will get confusing if you have too many colors. So want to make sure that that everything is labeled or correctly named so that you don't get confused while trying to pick which file goes where, because it will get confusing in the 3D Blender part of it if you're not prepared, pretty much. So okay, continue. Save. And see. Delete the rest of the layers, and then we just have the metal. In this case, also, the color out of the SVG doesn't really matter because we're going to apply the color separately inside of Blender. You'll see when I import it, they're all going to come in as one color, so it's not going to matter too much. But we want to have this file as a reference for the color that we want to pick. So save as. This one is just metal. SVG, save. transy. I'm going to leave this as is. We're going to come back for the color, hex codes, and such. So, okay, now we switch over to Blender. All right. So when you open Blender, this is what you see. Got a lot to click, and I don't even know half the buttons half the buttons do. Yeah, unless you have to pick the color inside of Blender, so you will have to bring over a hex code or RGB value, or just pick the color inside of Blender's color wheel. It's a good way to iterate and just double check everything. Like if you have multiple variants, right? So you can have multiple color side by side comparisons. So I'll show you that too in a second. So okay, this by default it gives you a camera, cube, light inside of the scenes collection area right here. Let me just go over the UI a little bit real quick. So generally everything has a shortcut and a button. I don't know all the shortcuts, so I'm going to mainly use the buttons that are floating around here. And it pretty much is self-contained. We're going to pretty much also stay in the layout mode. We don't need to go into all these different things, per se. The main area we're going to hang out is here in the scene collection area, and all these settings over here for rendering and previewing. So, what is that?
Mel message. She said that she was asking that she missed the first half. She's having a hard time following now.
What does that mean for the first half? Like the illustrators? I haven't started yet. I'm still just explaining. Okay, I'll just quickly go back to the Finder window. What we did is just save out the Illustrator layers, the different skins, different colors, as SVG files. You just want to make sure that the line work is cleaned up. We could go through another tutorial, another video showing how Alex cleans the Illustrator file up. That's a whole nother thing. So if you can get to this point where you have the colors separated, the hair separated, the any different kinds of aspects to the pin separated, the one that matters the most is the metal, really. So that and recess. Most pins don't have recess, so you might not have to worry about that. There's some issues with that too in 3D, so I'll share that later. So going back to Blender, I'm just gonna go over that a little bit. So generally, you can just move around. I'm using the Magic Mouse on a Mac, so I'm just using my finger to move around without any modifier keys. So you can also use this UI right here. So you can click and drag it around and stuff like that. So it's not that. And then there's like the zoom in, click and drag it, and the hand is there, click and drag it. So they made it pretty easy in Blender to you don't have to know all the shortcuts. Pretty much all the stuff is visually there mainly that you need. So it's just a lot of buttons. That's why it's complicated looking. All the shortcuts as buttons. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna delete everything that comes default. This is brand new Blender, new file. This is what shows up in here. So we're just gonna select everything and press delete. So nothing's in there. Okay, no, oh, okay. All right, so we saved out SVG files from Illustrator. So we're gonna import them into Blender. One thing is that Blender is trying to translate the code from Illustrator and SVG. Hello, Mebart. Mebiart. Hi.
Maybe. Maybe.
So we're just getting started. I'm gonna import SVG files, files that we saved out from Illustrator, and it's pretty simple. You just import, and it says SVG right here. Import SVG. Maybe it's or maybe.
Oh.
Okay.
Maybe.
And
Oh. Maybe.
Oh yeah, I haven't used the trackpad much. Mouse is recommended. I mean, if you're on Windows, definitely a middle click might be helpful with the middle wheel, um, because most 3D programs require 3 clicks. That's kind of standard between all of them. Blender is kind of nice where you can just use the UI more. So they're trying to make it more better over time, I guess. Yeah. Okay. So welcome. So okay, we're gonna continue. We're gonna import the first SVG because we're gonna take it slowly because it's gonna look complicated amount of files because it's splitting up all the strokes inside of one SVG file into multiple different layers.
Oh, they think our ears are cute.
Yay, we're on brand.
On brand.
All right, so go to wherever you saved the SVG files. So I'm gonna import in the metal. Import. So right here in the scene collection, it just imported a bunch of curves from that one metal file, SVG file. It's all separated. So we want to connect these all together before we even do anything. Right now you don't see anything, but it is there very tiny. So what I want to do is I want to add that cube back in just for scale. So you're gonna add objects right here, add a cube, and there's a move tool on the left side. I'm just gonna move it to the right for a little bit. So even the cube is sitting in the scene collection. It's just at the bottom. So it creates its own collection when you import in the SVG file, which is fine. We're gonna get rid of this in a second, but I'm just trying to show you that it is there. So we're gonna zoom in. I'm gonna use modifier keys, but you can zoom in with the zoom in and out and pan with this hand. So I think it's command and scroll. Yeah, and then shift to pan, command and scroll, shift to pan. Look, it's so tiny. She's in there. It's just she's really tiny. And that's just the metal layer. So we're gonna rotate her and orient her in the right direction and such, and we'll get there. But right now,
please remind me where the move button is.
Move button is right here. It's the hand symbol, so it's like a pen symbol when you press spacebar in Illustrator to move. It's the same icon, the hand icon. So you can click it and drag if you like. I'm just using the command or shift. I think it's shift and scroll if you want to do it that way. Since I'm using this mouse, I can go left, right, up, and down, so it's easier.
How do I move the cube?
To move the cube, you will have to use this move button on the left side. So let me zoom back out. So you have to select it first. So you actually just click on it, and then you use this move tool. And then these arrows should show up, and you can just move it left or right or up and down.
Oh, she got it. Yay!
Yeah. Yeah, and there's rotate and scale. So, you got scale and rotate tools in Illustrator. It's just you got a third dimension to deal with. Generally, that's what it is. Rather than just X and Y, you're also dealing with Z. So generally it's translatable from that. And then if you want to rotate the camera, you can just move this, click and drag on this bubble for X, Y, and Z. So I'm just using the mouse to do it. So all right, so it's there. The files are there. The vector for the metal thing is there. So we're just trying to make sure it imported at this point. We're not going to move it. We're not going to scale it right now. We're going to keep it where it is. The reason being, we want to import everything and then scale it up together so that it all scales together. And we're going to parent it to our empty null. So one thing to understand in 3D programs is that you can have points of origin inside of the program called nulls, which have position, rotation, scale, just like everything else. But they don't. They're just there to move things around. Really, they're just empty. In Blender, they're called empty. What is it? Yeah, empty plane axes. In most other 3D programs, they're called nulls. But this makes more sense. It's an empty axis, so it's just empty. There's nothing. There's no geometry. We're gonna add that later after we. Well, we can add it now, but let's clean this up a little bit. So I'm gonna move the cube out for now. I'm just gonna delete the cube. We don't really need the cube. That was just for frame of reference, so you don't lose yourself in 3D because there's no visual cue of how small something is or how big something is. So it's always nice to add something by default. It's a certain size. That's a relatively a good size to, go for because that's the default. So we're gonna delete the cube.
She said, Teal Teacup said the cube still helps. So thank you for the stuff.
Yeah, the cube. Hey, it's useful for me. I don't know, like I don't want to fly around in 3D world and it's like, oh, where am I? I don't know.
It's
Yeah.
infinite like space.
Yeah, it's infinite. So okay. So we're gonna clean this up. We're gonna combine all these curves into one curve. This is still just the metal SVG file. We haven't imported the rest of it. So we're just gonna select them all. Shift click, curve, select them all. And I think the shortcut is to Command J to join, but I think it's also in here somewhere. Object join right here. Command J. For some reason my shortcut's not working, so we're going to use this UI thing. So it works too because it's here. Object, you can transform the objects to do something. So all these curves, we're going to select these curves and join them into one curve because we don't need all these to be separate. All right, so join. Now it's all one curve. It's still there as it was. It's just joined together all the strokes into one group. But in this case, they actually just joined the curve together. It's not even a group anymore. So it's just one curve. All the curve data is in one area, so it's cleaner. So we can name it. Let's name it. So this is metals. So right here in the scene selection, it kind of has a hierarchy. It's trying to organize the layers for you. And also you have to understand that these are not layers per se because one can be on top of another one, but in 3D it's not on top of it. It's just a way of organizing what's in the scene. So we're going to name this stuff correctly so we don't forget what's in the scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this out of this hierarchy. We don't need it to be outside. So you can just click and move it out. So now it's aligned with it. We can just, this is just our arbitrary box. So we can delete this. And we still have the curve in the center of the scene. We're going to still leave it there. We're not going to move it. We're not going to scale it. We're just going to leave it there. We're just organizing the files. What we are going to do, we're going to add that empty layer I was talking about. So we're going to go to the add menu. We're going to go to empty and plane axis. So it's just what it says, empty access is nothing. But what we can do is take the metal layer and put it underneath the empty layer and move the empty layer around and scale that up and stuff without scaling the metal stuff up. One thing is nice for the empty layer is on default 0, 0, 0. Everything is zeroed out. Sometimes when you import in files, they're sometimes not at 0, 0, 0. And even in this case, like if I zoom in, the axis for the metal curves are at 0, 0, 0, but the curves itself are kind of offset to the side because things. Right? So you want to make sure that you're scaling the correct from the correct location from 0, 0, 0. So when we create this empty layer, we're basically forcing whatever import we have or whatever curves we have to actually be scaled from 0, 0, 0. Just to keep it clean, you know. All right, so when you click and drag this metal layer around, it gives you shortcuts. When you see it's like move inside collection, shift to parent. So we want shift to parent. We're trying to parent this. We're trying to make it a child of this empty layer. So this is going to become the parent. So it's inside of parent. So it's basically the parent layer and the child layer. That's how most 3D programs deal with hierarchy, calling parents and childs.
Children.
Lots of children. Yeah, lots of children. So, okay, we're gonna name this. We're gonna actually call this just whatever. I'm gonna call it Kente. It's arbitrary. It's just the name of the pin we had before we named her Majesty. Actually, we'll just name her Majesty. Majesty.
Yeah, why are you right?
Yeah, that's Majesty. Don't worry about the other name. Yeah, okay. And I already lost myself right here, so I'm zoomed in too much. I need to put the cube back in. So it's like oh my god, I'm inside the cube. Okay, so zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. Get outside the cube. All right, that's good. That's a good distance. Let's delete the cube now. All right. All right. Now we're gonna add the rest of it.
So maybe here it says lagging for me. Anyone else?
Lagging. Is it lagging for you?
No, not on the phone. I am like right behind you, so I
don't know.
See.
Okay.
Yes, was lagging, but it stopped. Okay, so maybe just take your time a little bit.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, all caps.
Let me drink some water. I don't talk too much.
Came off really strong just now. Being all
caps. Okay, I just realized it. Okay. All right. Back to it. So we're gonna import the rest of the line work. So we're gonna file import SVG, and we're gonna get let's do recess metal next. Import. Again, it makes its own little bucket, imports everything in. Oh, that's kind of nice. It's telling you how many curves it has. 22 curves. That's nice. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna select just the curves we imported just now for the recess metal, and I'm just gonna select them. Go to Object, Join, name them Recessed. And one thing is, right here, you want to click and drag this into here directly, and it's weird. It's not gonna work exactly. What it does is like make a shortcut to it, which is a concept that I'm still trying to understand why it does that. So what you need to do, this specific step, is you have to pull this outside of this box into this empty area first, and then pull it into this Majesty null that we created and hold down shift to add it. Like it says shift to parent, we have to hold shift and drag it in there and parent it so that it gets disconnected from this. One of the things that it is trying to, I guess, optimize is not have duplicate files, so it creates shortcuts to files or instances, as it's called in 3D. It's just a way to save on render time for complex files. For us, it doesn't matter because we're not making something complex. Of course, you can always research into it. There's some other features that are associated with shortcuts. I'll show you what next time I'll make that mistake so that you'll realize that what it does. So
yeah. So like right now, I'm working on a pin design. I'm trying to learn Illustrator on iPad. So the idea is that next time we can kind of like preview that design, how we set it up in Illustrator, and hopefully like do troubleshooting of like common mistakes that might happen when trying to import.
yeah, common mistakes. So right now I'm going to delete this bucket. It's empty because we moved it down into under Majesty null. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna delete this. Don't need that anymore. So file import. We're gonna import the next layer, next color per se. So we're gonna import the hair. Okay. Yeah. So we're gonna join these curves together again. We're just gonna select them all inside of what we just imported, the hair. And we're going to go to object and join. So now I want to make that mistake that I was talking about earlier. So I'm going to try to click and drag it into the Majesty thing right away and hold down shift to parent. So right here, it did this weird thing where it made a ghost of itself rather than actually move the curve over. So we want to avoid that. It might still work, but I generally don't know what it's doing, so I would generally just avoid it. So we're gonna Command Z back, or yeah, it doesn't Command Z back, so we're gonna delete this. So that's the weird thing right here. So I deleted the shortcut, but I deleted the actual file itself too, the actual curves we imported. So we have to re-import it. That's the weirdness about it. It's like, okay, it's just complicating things. For some reason, it's probably good for some reason, but not this reason right now. So we're gonna import that again. I'm gonna import the hair. Select the hair curves inside what we just imported. Go to Object, Join, and we're going to name this Hair. And we're going to do this correctly this time. We're going to move it outside the box in this empty area, and it moves outside the box. And then we're going to move it and hold down Shift into Majesty. So it just separates the connection. So we delete that old box. And you can move this up and down to create more space for you to have empty space if you have multiple colors and layers to deal with. All right, so last but not least, import. What's left? Skin? Yeah, skin. All right, skin is small, so we're just gonna join them together. Object, join, name it skin, pull it out into this empty space, and then click and drag and hold down shift to import it into underneath this null. All right. So now we are ready to scale it up. So, and rotate it and move it around so that we get to a position we want. All right. So this is where the cube will come in handy for our scale. We're going to put the cube in here and move it to the right, left, wherever, just so you have some visual cue of how big you're scaling things up to. So I'm going to click on Majesty, the empty null. Since everything is a child of this parent, we're going to scale this Majesty up so everything scales up together. So right now we're going to go to the left, click scale, and you just click and drag a thing in just in this empty area, and it'll scale up. It's supposed to. Hold on. Right, okay. In this case, weirdly enough, you have to select these squares right here on these axis nodes. So I'll explain. Some people might not know. So for the axis, when you select something, it shows you multiple controls. Right now it's showing me move with the arrows, but it's also showing me these squares. Those squares generally mean scale. So you can click and drag them and also scale them in an axis plane. So right here, the blue one is saying that I'm going to scale in this grid pattern in this area. Now, since the line work, if we zoom in again, is lying down on this axis. So if I select this on the green and red axis, it's lying down in this area. So if I go around it, it's sitting in this plane of sorts. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this plane marker for this plane and scale it up. Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, we're going to scale it up using this, but then we're going to use the scale tool still. We have to be on scale tool. We just have to select this to scale it up together, these two axes. So it's going to scale it up like this. All right. Let me zoom out so you can see the cube. And like I said before, I'm still getting used to this UI because I'm used to using Cinema 4D, not Blender. It's slight differences, and I'm used to using different shortcuts. So we'll try to make it through. All right. So since it's lying down on this plane, we're going to select this plane scale size and just drag. Now you can just keep holding and dragging, and it kind of goes on the opposite side. If you see the cursor, it keeps going in an infinite loop to the other side of the screen, and it's cutting into the cube now. Our new pin design is cutting into the cube. It's generally telling you that's the size you want to scale up to. So this is where we can hold down and stop right here. And now we have it scaled up to a relative good size because the cube is there for reference. Of course, you can go bigger or you can even zoom in and stay smaller, but sticking with the defaults is usually a good idea. So now we're going to go to the rotate tool and then select Majesty, empty null again. Now these bands show up. So one of the things that you have to watch out for, but generally you don't really have to. You can eyeball it. You can just click and drag this and eyeball the rotation. But I'm very stickler and I want to be exactly 90 degrees rotation. So you can come down here in this panel, the object properties panel, and transform it here. You could have scaled it up here as well. Like you can see the scale right here went up to 66. So you can do it here if you don't want to do it with the mouse. You can do it with the numbers. But it's just nice to be able to scale something together, like these two X and Y scales scaled up together. So So you can just make this 70 and 70, and that would work as well. So right now we're going to rotate it. So I'm going to rotate it using the rotation for X, Y, and Z right here. So if I rotate it right now, click and drag it, you can see how it's rotating around the X-axis, Command Z, Y-axis, Z-axis. We would just want to get it to a correct orientation before we extrude it. It's a good scale now, I think. So what do we want? We want this. So this is, and click it, type in 90 degrees. So it's now upright. And then we want to rotate it on not the Y, Z. All right. And that's also 90. Now, in 3D, what's front and what's back is relative. So you can rotate it to any direction and that'll be the front. You have to do this drop down thing. It might be hidden right here if you don't see it. So it's going to be under, if you click Majesty, you want object properties, and then there's this transform drop down.
Is it showing now?
Is there?
Oh, helps. When you mention it, remember when we record it, they won't see they won't see the chat, so you have to say the message out loud for context.
What message?
Oh, saying that.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. TLT Cup doesn't see it, so we're trying to show
where the transform options are.
Yes.
So we just showed where.
Yes.
Found it. Yay!
All right, cool. We'll continue forward. And yeah, so like I said, it's relative. I mean, we could have let it be on the ground, and we just moved the camera up here and kind of oriented the camera to be the right direction, whatever you want, really. But I'm just trying to organize it to what makes sense to me. That's what it is. Okay, so you can kind of see there's some kind of reflection on the pin already. So it's kind of like a default reflection that's going on. It kind of turned it an object by default because what Blender is assuming is that you're going to import something like a curve and want to make it into an object. That's an assumption that they're making. So they're already kind of giving you geometry on the object. It's kind of flat right now. It's not extruded, which we're going to fix right now. Before we do that, just like we did the rotation, just like we did the scale, we're going to move this and design this object to the center of the world. Click on Majesty. We can click and drag right here and change the numbers to get into the right position. Or go to the Move tool, click and drag these arrows. Or click and drag this square to move it in that plane. And just approximate the center. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be approximation. So let me just move it where we can see her. All right. So approximation. We don't need the cube anymore, so we can delete the cube since we have her for scale and reference now. All right, so if you go through and select all these layers, you'll see how it does a live selection on the object itself. So now we're going to start with the metal and extrude the metal out a little bit. Let me look at the notes. Let's see what we got. Okay. I don't want to forget anything. Okay, so just like we found the object properties to transform, we're going to find the geometry panel. Let's see, where is it? Sometimes you just have to click through all these colorful buttons on the panel just to see what options you have. Sometimes you want something here. Oh, okay. So, yeah, so we're going to go to this curve panel. Since we're trying to extrude a curve, there's a nice little symbol for a curve in this scene selection area. So we're going to go to this curve right here for the properties for that curve. So right now I have the metal layer selected. We're going to go to the curve panel right here. By default, the shape dropdown is open. I don't think you need to mess with anything there, so we can close that. What we want is the geometry dropdown. So we open that up. There's going to be a few options in here. What we want to look at is extrude right here. Now, by default, the units in Blender are meters, which is unfortunate because meters are too huge. But it's all relative, so we just want to approximate what looks good. So I can just click and drag and it'll start extruding already. So it's around 0.1 meters. It's not bad. It's a little too thick. We can make it point, I don't know, you can type out 0.7, 0.6. 0.6 might be good. Okay. I messed up right here. I made it really huge. Go back down.
How huge is really?
I just need 0.06. That's what I meant to do, not 0.6. 0.06. All right. You can use the controls again, zoom, move, and zoom and see the extruded metal layer. Everything else is still flat. It's just extruded metal layer right now. It's kind of fun to see in 3D. Okay. All right. So 0.06. That's all right. That looks like pin thickness. Yeah, we'll go with that. All right. So next step, we'll do the hair. Now, since we have the same panel open, it's just going to switch over to that. And the settings are going to be 0 again, so we'll just change it. We can make it 0.06 again. I think in real life, enamel's not as thick as metal, so I'd do like 0.05 or 0.0555, so half of that, even smaller. Just give it a slight, difference in thickness. So when you're rendering, it's going to look slightly offset. You're going to get a shimmer effect on the edge of the metal because it's a little higher than the enamel color itself. You don't have to do that. I just do that just because it gives you, I'll zoom in and you'll see what I mean. It gives you an edge to work with.
Oh, helps. You should make sure you drink some water.
Yeah, I need to drink some water. Thank you, Alex.
I don't see you drinking.
Hold on, let me finish this. Let me finish my talk. So yeah, it gives you this little lip right here, which is nice to have when you're rendering reflections. Sometimes it gives you a rim effect. You'll see what I mean later on. So it's just slightly smaller than the metal. So metal is 0.006. I made the hair 0.055, so it's half of that 0.01. Yeah. So now, like I said, using meters as a unit of measurement is unfortunate. You can always change that in preferences to something else by default, like centimeters or even millimeters. So, make it easier. Make it more real world scale if you like. You could even do inches, 1.25, 1.75. So that might make sense later on. But right now, it's just, again, it's all relative. Okay, so we did the metal, we did the hair. We'll do skin. That's pretty simple too, same as the hair. 0.055 extrude. And we have the skin. Now, where it gets interesting is recessed areas. So we want recess to be recessed. So we don't want to be as thick as the enamel, but still it has some thickness. Again, it's just relative. You can just eyeball it. So we did 0.06 meters for, I'll call it units, 0.06 units for the metal, 0.055 for enamel. So for recessed, we can do 0.03. Let's try that, 0.03. And sometimes when you have the selection turned on, it's hard to see what you're looking at. So you want to click away in this empty area in the scene selection so you can move around without a selection highlighter turned on. Okay. So we have all the extrudes in here. We have the metal or the pin generally positioned and scaled, and everything's there. Now we're going to get to the fun part. It's the metal reflection.
Did you drink water yet?
Yes, I drank water. Thank you, Alex. Let's see. Shade.
I dropped my pen.
Huh?
I dropped my pen.
Oh.
It rolled somehow.
Okay. All right. So, metal.
How did it roll? It went all the way to the back of the couch.
Okay. All right. So, let me see if I remember this correctly. We have metal properties right here, right below the curve object properties right here. Object data properties. What a name. All right. Rip pen. Yeah.
I had to climb underneath there like your dog, Maddie.
That's a memory. All right. Material properties. We're gonna make it shiny. Oh, another thing. Gold has a specific hex color, which you can just find by Googling it online. Oh, okay, cool. Got hunting jackets that you recommend, Alex.
Oh, nice. Aren't they lovely?
All right, so we're gonna look up gold hex color on Google. Now, usually that's what it says. That's a hex color for gold, I suppose. You can get a hex color for gold, silver, rose gold. There's different kinds of gold colors too, so I generally just get this for frame of reference right here. So I'll just select this D4AF37, right, and then minimize that. All right.
Oh, that's crazy. That's so helpful.
Yeah, I know, right? I saw somebody use that for Blender, and I was like, okay, yeah, why not? So gold has a hex color. All right. So inside of this, we have the metal object selected. We are going to go to material properties for the texture. By default, it already applied a texture to the curve, to the metal. So we're going to change the color on. So right here, by default, all these things are drop downs are open. So surface is the one we want. And inside of surface, we have the base color for the metal. So we're going to click that, and a standard color wheel. We got the hex code, paste in our hex code. All right, it's kind of yellow, muddy yellow cold on there now. So we're gonna mess with this further because I don't really like the gold color as is. I usually just make it a little more orange, just slightly.
Because we want 18K.
Yeah.
24K.
Yeah, that's what we want. So it's a little more orange than green. Yeah. So already you're kind of seeing it come together a little bit, but we can go further. I want to start showing you the reflections and such. So there's a metallic slider, of course, it's right there. We can click in metal metallic. One thing we can also do to make this start looking prettier is go up here to this. Oh, thank you. Thank you for ordering the pins.
Thank you.
Um,
We couldn't decide on the variants. That's how it always is. So we
yeah.
Really appreciate it.
So we want. There's a concept here for shading, rendering inside of this viewport right here. We're gonna make it look pretty in here.
Oh, so sorry,
Okay.
I missed that with the lag. What did you just do?
So what we just did is pick the color. Yeah, I just said I'll get both last night.
Both variants.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. So yeah, going back to a few steps, to the color. We picked the color for the gold. For metallic slider right here, right before, below the base color, we can just turn it up to generally. You can go full 1, but we'll mess with this further. We just turn it on. It's set to 0 by default. We're gonna turn it up to 8.8. And we're gonna turn down the roughness. Okay, yeah.
What's happening? See? Okay. This way, FYI, on my phone and computer. Oh. Maybe I should put on.
Well, yeah, you can go 5G if you want.
But yeah.
One thing is that we're also on a iMac that's on Wi-Fi streaming out. I should do this on a Ethernet cord.
Yeah. Okay, hold on. Just take a moment and let it catch up a little bit.
Do tell me when it's lagging so I can pause.
You said 8.8 and then it stopped, but it's okay now.
Okay. Yeah, so right here for metallic, you can make it 0.8.
I'm gonna get headphones so I can hear when the lag is happening.
Yes, please.
I'm off Wi-Fi now.
All right, so the roughness, we want to bring down I don't know.
Where's your AirPods? Where you put it? Because I'm using your phone to watch.
Huh?
Where's your AirPods?
They're right here. Maybe. Okay, so thank you, Teal. So the roughness we want to bring down to, I don't know, point. We're gonna mess with this further because we want to see how it looks. Just maybe visually, it's subjective. So we're gonna keep it around 0.1. That's fine. One thing I want to do is right here we have these different kinds of viewport shadings. So one thing I was trying to talk about earlier, is that there's two kinds of renderings that are going on. One is to preview while we're working, and one is going to be the final render that you do outside of the program. Now, you can save out the preview from the viewport, which is what we're going to do, because generally we use this method to provide a template, or not a template, a reference for the manufacturer, so they can see, oh, that's what they want. That's what the look is, kind of. So it doesn't need to be that pretty, really, but it's nice to look at for ourselves as well. But if you want a final render with alpha, when I say alpha, that means transparency. If you want that it's its own kind of setup that you have to perform. But we're gonna just work in this viewport area. So for this viewport, the next step you want to do is right here up in the corner. We have viewport shading. Right now it's set to solid. We want to go to material preview. So now what that does is, if you notice, it adds kind of something to reflect, really. It's adding kind of like an image to reflect off the metal.
Artificial daylight and stuff.
Yeah. So right now it's just not pointing in the right direction. We can turn that image. We're going to turn that image right now, so I don't have to do it later. So to do that, we're going to click this arrow right here. And you can see the image is reflecting in the viewport shading. So that's what it's reflecting in the pin. And it looks like a forest with the ground or whatever it is. It's by default built into the program. So we're just gonna rotate it, and you can see it's live rotating on the left side, just to get the right kind of reflection. Do something like this.
Did you share it with it not being in the orb, where you show the whole background, the environment, like you showed me? Remember where it shows it floating in the we're trying to show? I think there was some setting that you're showing because you were like so amused by it when you were learning this.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. Yeah. Okay, by default, the background's opacity. Yeah, you have to click this right here, the viewport shading. Right now it's probably set to viewport, solid. You want to click to material preview.
Read out the chat.
Oh, okay, yeah. So Teal Teacup says, my pin looks very matte right now. Not shiny like yours. So yeah, we want to switch over from viewport shading to or viewport shading solid to viewport shading material preview mode. So it's just one click button up here in the corner, and it gives you something to reflect. One of the things that you want to watch out for, like, is if you're not getting a reflection like this, is the roughness that I was talking about earlier. The roughness might be too high, so you want to bring that down. The more you bring it down, the more shinier it is going to be.
It makes it give that polished look.
Mm-hmm. Same thing with the metallic. The more higher the metallic, the shinier the metalness of the pin is going to be. So, like, if I bring it down to 0, it becomes all solid-ish metal. So we want it to be kind of high, just to get kind of like a mirror finish of sorts. Let me know if you get to that point, Teal Teacup, so I can go to the next step. Like, these are the settings. So, like, we're at the metal. Select the metal. We go to the texture. These are the settings for the reflection. We want to make sure we're in the material preview and viewport shading. Okay. Yeah, so we definitely want to make this metallic right here, and the roughness be low. Metallic be high, roughness be low. We're not touching the specular. Specular can stay the same. So yeah, we're kind of, almost there to a nice looking render already.
Wait. Hold on. My stream just lagged. Paused right now.
Okay.
So I'm gonna try reloading it real quick. Take a breather.
Is the music still gone?
Trying to do it right now. Is it lagging for anyone else? Oh. This is gorgeous and so happy right now.
Yeah, it's fun to get the shiny bits.
Oh, Maddie says that I kind of love the black enamel with the gold too, even though that's not the final. Yeah.
Yeah, so, black and gold.
Oh.
That's the classic color combination.
Oh,
What?
They're saying no music on the stream.
Oh.
Did you pause it?
No, I think it's automatically pausing on its own for some reason.
Oh. How dare
they? Yeah. That's okay.
One day we should make a Mac gold with black.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, like, if you think about the manufacturing processes, like, if you go matte, it's nice, but sometimes you can get scratches, right, and such that kind of are really apparent. But one thing is with shininess that they actually are going through a process of actually polishing it, so that sometimes rubs out issues. I would think.
Oh.
I don't know exactly.
Oops, they said, is our OBS desktop audio on?
Not on OBS. I'm on Twitch Studio.
Yeah.
The volume might be a little too low.
Is it playing?
It's playing.
Okay.
If it's not going through, it's okay. As long as you guys can hear me, that's fine.
Yeah, hearing hubs is the important point.
Yeah.
Tested out matte thanks to us. Bought a matte gold version of our pin and then had to try it.
Yeah.
Oh, so maybe I already said there's music. Thank you, Teal. You got the Stardust.
Thank you, May. What? Start?
Yeah, I got the start. Ponko's sleeping and barking.
Our dog is sleep barking. All right. Nice. All right.
Can you guys hear?
I don't know if you guys can hear our dog barking. While she's sleeping.
Oh, Maddie has to drop.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. I hope he doesn't have too many symptoms. This is from his dose.
Oh, okay. All right, Betty. So okay, so we're gonna continue. We're gonna add color to the enamel now, and the recessed area, because the recessed area needs its own metal color. So metal has this color, and we're kind of there. So we're gonna do recess. It's gonna be the same color. So what we can do is we can copy the hex code that I kind of adjusted. Go to the recessed material. So click on recessed, and we're in the material properties. This sphere with the checker box marking, that generally means texture, so that's what where it's gonna be. So base color, we apply the same gold, but in this case, recessed areas are, yeah. So recessed sandblast, it's basically less reflective, right? So in this case, what we're gonna do is have it be metallic, but the roughness is higher. The roughness is the sandblasting in this case.
Yeah.
So make the metallic high. It's kind of similar in this area, so I want to zoom in to the recessed areas now. Right. All right. So also I'm going to make the roughness on this metal a little higher. It's a little too shiny. All right. So in the recess area, for roughness, for the sandblast thing, you just up the roughness, so it's less. It's just different enough from the metal itself being that shiny, because the sandblast area is metallic, but it's not shiny. It's shiny, but it's muted. It's blurred, so roughness blurs it up. So that gives you that look, generally from a distance. And if you provide multiple renders to your manufacturer from different angles, they get the idea. That's, oh, okay, it's pushed in. You just want to get the idea across, that it's a different level of metal. Okay, so we want to do the same thing again, but now for the hair and skin. So for that, I'm gonna go back to Illustrator and grab the hex code from Illustrator that we kind of picked out. I guess for white we don't really need a hex code, but for the skin color right here, just double click here and copy the hex code and go back to Blender. Go to skin, material properties, base color, and paste in the hex code. Now right off the bat, it's not gonna look exactly the same, like if you put it side by side with Illustrator. It's because how the light is in the scene, it's reflecting differently. So in real life, if you've got that pin and put in sunlight, it's gonna look different. Color is gonna look different than what the color you picked. That's where this is helpful when you pick colors, to preview them in 3D, because it kind of gives you an idea of what realistic lighting might do to the color when you see it in person. So, where's Illustrator? Okay, so we have Illustrator right here. Let me actually pick the hair color too, real quick.
Can I say a little story?
Is it quick?
Yeah.
All right.
So like for example, what he was saying about you can see like the colors more realistically, like in 3D. So like a common color that turns out kind of interesting is yellow. So yellow and enamel,
Yeah,
there's a lot of
yellow.
times that you might see like the enamel color after it's baked and everything, and it's on the and it kind of has like this greenish hue to it. So it's kind of surprising because like you might swear that you picked like 123C, and that's like one of the most saturated like bright yellows. That is not exactly highlighter yellow, like bright sun or yellow, and then that tends to come out green sometimes. Some of it is due to like the production process, like it baking and the colors getting darker, but also it's interacting with the metal and also what it looks like in true daylight.
Yeah.
So that factors in as well, and you can kind of see that happening in 3D.
Yeah, you can kind of approximate the look of how all the different yellows will come out, really. Because the 3D program is trying to preview the color as realistically as it thinks is possible. Um, yeah. So, since black hair is popular, we can always make it black. There you go, black. um, there you go. Let's see. It has okay. So enamel itself usually is reflective, especially hard enamel. So we're gonna up the or down the roughness of it a little bit. We're gonna see what looks decent. We're not gonna do the metallic. We're gonna keep the metallic on an enamel 0. So recently I restocked the pin in gold. The yellow came out more green than it did when I was using black nickel. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe in that case, it was. I mean, the it being a handmade product, it's really hard to. But like what I was saying, like this is like in the best case scenario. Us doing it in 3D, it's not going through like the production process. So you can imagine that if something is kind of coming out yellow in a 3D program, then you can kind of bet there's a pretty high chance of it happening in real life as well.
Yeah.
So that's where you can like help narrow down your color choices a little bit.
The reason we're also saying this is because we checked something in 3D before we manufactured it, and we saw the greenness and the yellow come out in 3D, and we thought, oh yeah, that's not how it's gonna look like. And then when we got the pin, it was actually that like that. So that's why we're saying that it's useful for color picking.
It warned
problem colors.
It warned us, and we didn't listen.
Oh, okay, yeah. So now going back to this, enamel itself is a bit reflective. So we want to take the roughness down of the enamel itself. We're not gonna up the metallic because it's not metal. Thank you for coming on. I mean, if we can help the community make easier decisions, it'll help us all, really.
And also, it's a really cool skill to learn.
Yeah. Blender is great. Blender is great for illustrations too, if you want to get into that later on, and animating. Alright, so I'm gonna go with 1.4. It's a little too reflective. I'm gonna go back up a little bit. 1.9. Yeah, that's a good blur. 1.9. Let's go with 1.9. Same thing with the skin. 1.9. 0.1.9. Yeah.
Ooh, yes, please. It was like.
On to what?
I mean, I'm guessing the comments about like illustrations.
Oh yes, yeah. Yeah, it does have some neat stuff. Like there's I don't know if you know about some of these artists out there that are doing Blender illustration animations, where
It starts with a D. I forgot his name.
Ah, yeah.
I can look it up and I can send it to you.
Yeah, post it in chat.
Yeah. I'll do that in a moment. I'm trying to.
All right, so one other step we can do, a few steps to make this even prettier, if it's not already pretty, is to mess around again right here with the material preview. We want to be in material preview right here, and click this arrow. We can rotate. Oh, yeah. So for the thing that guy that does Blender illustration, yeah, the guy that does Blender illustrations, that's the one. Yeah. So right here we can turn the opacity for what is being reflected up. We can also turn down the blur so we can actually see what's in the background that's being reflected. There's a few other options too if you want to pick a different reflection. I think it's in this gear. No, not the gear. So click arrow and you click the image. Yeah, so it gives you a few options right here to change what the reflection type is. And this is in the software by default. So, you know, we can make it a little night thing. The one thing is very distracting to see the background, so I'm gonna turn that down again. Yeah, that's Dedos. I think he's French.
Dedos?
French illustrator, yeah.
Yeah, so cool.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna turn up the blur again too a little bit, because the reflections are blurry. If it's also blurry. I'm gonna go back to the other forest scene because I generally like it. It's a good amount of speckly lights. So yeah, one thing we're gonna do is we're gonna mess with the rendering settings a little bit to make it prettier. So it's, I think it's under render properties right here. Yeah, render properties. It looks like a DSLR icon. It's kind of interesting, the icons they picked. But right here, render properties, we're gonna go to bloom. We're gonna add bloom. And if you hover over these settings, it sometimes gives you this small description of what it is. So for bloom is high brightness pixel generated glowing effect. It looks pretty. So turn that on. Sometimes it's not going to do anything right away because we don't have really high brightness reflections going on, but we will adjust that further. Also, another one you might want is ambient occlusion. It really adds nice shadows to corners, basically. So if objects are near to each other, it will add some darkness to it. So if I turn it off and on again, it just gives it some kind of shading because the objects are so close together. It's basically saying that it's going to be darker because it's close together. It really gives you that 3D depth for space. Okay, so what we're gonna do?
Hubs.
Yes.
Skin tone. Can you make it the skin tone that we actually use?
What do you mean?
Because that's the darker skin tone. We have like the.
I know, but it's fine. It's fine. It's another variant. There you go. This is the third variant. It's the third variant.
A third variant.
Somebody requested black hair, so I just switched from white hair to black hair, so it's okay.
Turn bloom on and it looks crazy glowy. I wonder what I did differently.
It's probably just the light. I mean, if you go down the drop down for bloom, you can mess with the threshold. Like you can like really mess with how it affects intensity and stuff. You just mess around with these kind of things and see what you like best. It's not needed per se because we already kind of have a finished look. So I'm just trying to add more prettiness to it. Another thing in the render settings is to up this render number right here. So what that does is gives it more, I don't know, render processing. It makes it look prettier. It just takes more. It's not as low res. It's like higher quality basically. So it's 64. So what I do generally is just double the number. So 64 can become 128. 16 can become 32. But for this, it doesn't really affect it too much. But for different kinds of renders, it does affect it a lot. But in this case, it doesn't matter too much.
Drink water.
It's okay.
Are you sure?
So I'm gonna just make them both 128. Viewport is what we're looking at right now. That's the one that matters. Render is what we can render out of the software. Just to get the right kind of reflections, I'm gonna rotate the skybox again right here. Just gives you different kinds of effects. You want to get the right kind of bloom. So you see if I have the reflection right on it, the bloom really comes in, right? So that's probably what's going on. So if you rotate the skybox, it might help as well to get not as strong as the reflections. This is where I want to be, right here, because I kind of want to bloom on the edge. That's kind of fun. And then the colors are more what we want. So now, right now, like the colors are better.
Said yes.
Yeah. So you want the bloom to be on the edge, so it's just to give it that tastiness. It looks tasty, basically. So right here, the skin tone is looking pretty good. It's matching up pretty nicely. Of course, in real world, the colors always look different lights. Yeah, so if you rotate the skybox, it helps because some parts of the skybox are brighter than the other. So yeah. At this point, I mean, we're generally done.
Yeah. I guess you can explain how to export with the transparency in the back, so you can use it for pin
well, that's the thing. Transparency is difficult out of here because there's two ways to render this out. One thing is that we have a material preview. In Blender, material preview is just, a way to set up the scene and get it to a certain look, but the final render is not going to look like this because this is just something to preview. It's a preview. It's not a render. It looks like a final render to me. I wish if you want to use this, you can use this. All you need to do is click View and Viewport Render Image right here. And what it does is just takes a snapshot of what you see right there. Right? You already worked so hard to get to this point. I just want that. That's what you can do. Right? So if I click this, under View, Viewport Render Image, it just renders out this viewport as an image by itself right here. So now there's some wonkiness going on here, right? So this is what we rendered out. This is an image you can save out, image, save as, and save it wherever you like. Right now it's cropped weirdly. We're gonna fix that. So we're not gonna save this. All right. So one thing you have to do is, oh, I'm getting a call. One thing you have to do is 1 second. Alex, can you text my mom back? And I'll call her back.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
I just did it.
All right. So I'll try to finish it up because I need to call my mom back, but we're almost at the end. One thing you have to do is go to output properties. We can change the resolution of what is outputted. So generally for Instagram, square is good. So we just make this 1080 by 1080 pixels. And I changed this in the output properties right here. Another thing we need to do is add a camera to the scene so it has an understanding of what we're trying to render. It's going to use that camera as the source. So just like we added cubes and we added other things, we add camera with the add button right here. Camera. So right now it's just sitting in the center of the scene. So it's a camera preview thing. You can select it, move the camera back and forth. It's a tiny little dot with a square in front of it. That's where it's looking, right? So if I move it around, right around here, right there. And if I click on this, there's this button, toggle camera view. Click it, and this kind of drags you in there. Now it's a square because we set it up to be 1080 by 1080. That's what the camera understands. That's what it's gonna be. That's what we want. We can make it an HD resolution or even 4K if you like, or even higher, whatever you want. It's just gonna take longer to render. In this case, I kind of want to move the camera around like I'm moving around the viewport right now. So to do that, there's a really hidden little arrow right here. If you notice, right on the UI, it's very hidden. And we want that to be popped out. Now after you pop it out, it stays popped out. Which is nice. That's what we want. We want this little UI right here of tools, views, and such. I hope that's not confusing. There's a little arrow right here. It's just a tiny little thing. It moves all this UI for the zooming and panning to the left. On a bigger screen, it'll be easier. I scaled this down so it's easier on the stream. But so that's what we have. We have a camera in the scene, and what we want is we want to move around the scene.
Oh.
Yeah, I know it's a really hidden arrow. I don't know why it's hidden. It's hidden. And then it becomes a menu that you can look at a lot more settings. What we want to do is select the camera and go to view. In the view, we want to check off this box, camera to view. So it's a lock of sorts. So when we're in, we're gonna click this out. We're gonna, so when we're in the camera preview, now when we move the cursor around, we can move the camera while we're moving around the scene. So same shortcuts, same everything. We can zoom out the camera, move or pan the camera with the same shortcuts. That's what it's doing. It's locking those viewport movements to the camera, so the camera moves with you, basically. So we want to get to we want to fit the pin inside of this box, pretty much. So that's that. There. That's an Instagram square right there. Yeah. All right. So all that little arrow box hidden thing that is doing is locking the camera itself to our movements around the viewport. That's why we want it. Usually you don't need it. we're just trying to lock the movements inside of the view thing, the camera to view. So yeah, just locking the camera settings, the movement, position, rotation to the view settings where we're moving around with the move tool, zoom tool, and stuff such like that. That's all we're doing in here, and then we close it off. I don't know how I can hide it again to a tiny little arrow again. So it floats there. So we got that. So if I do the render again of the viewport, let's see what we get. Yeah, so it's taking the camera's box, basically the box, and rendering that out from the viewport. So now, this is just a material preview. It's just taking what we have inside of the in the preview right here and just spitting that out, because it's already rendering right there. It's giving you a preview. And generally that's what I like. It looks great. I set it up. It took time, but that's what I want, right? For our purposes. Maybe in the future they'll give us the ability to render this out as the final render, but they consider this as a prep render. It's not the final render to the developers that develop this. Because right here up top in the left corner, we have the render button. And if you press render, it won't look like this. I'll show you right here. It says render image. It looks like a little film strip reel. So right here, I just want to specify viewport render image and render image are two different things. Just want to say that out loud. So render, and if we do render image, it'll do another one, but it's not gonna look good. It's not. It's gonna be all dark. It's most of it the way there, but it's not the look we have right now, right? The reason that is, by default, this preview is using a skybox to reflect the light and such, and it's built into this material preview for the viewport for this area alone by itself. It's not meant to be used to render out the image, final render. You can, if you can force it, but it's a convoluted steps for that. So what I recommend is just going to view and do a viewport render, because we already are at a finished product for our use case. So if you do it that way, we have the reflections, we have the nice metal and colors and all that, and you can take this into Photoshop and mess with it further. One thing is that we get these weird lines for the UI and the grid and stuff. We can turn those off. So I'll show you how. I think it's right here. If you hover over these, overlays. So if we click this, it turns off all the UI that shows you where the plane is, where the grid is, where the axis Y and Z, all that is. So now we have a clean look. So now go to viewport and viewport render image, and we get a clean render. Generally what the viewport. Now there's some caveats, of course, with this, is that we don't have transparency. We get the background with it. The gray background is also a part of the render, which is unfortunate, but this is a faster way to get to your final what you want to share or even to give to the manufacturer, basically.
Yeah, because like when we usually send these renderings to our manufacturer, especially if we want to like make sure that we get like a good contrast of colors if stuff is similar. I mean, it doesn't matter if the stuff is on gray. When we're sending it to them.
Yeah. So you want to provide as many renders as possible, and this is the quickest way to get to it. I mean, I can go into how to do it correctly, but
They're telling you to drink water.
oh, thank you. Hydrate. Thank you.
So your enamel pen edges are nicer than mine. It will mess with my metal layer setting.
Yeah. So that's just rotating the skybox again to the position, right? If it's looking rough, it might be something in Illustrator you have to fix. But generally, if you're talking about the reflection, you just mess around with the rotation of this, because what it's doing is just activating the bloom on the highest, brightest pixels in the scene. But if I make it dark, it goes away relatively.
I have another question. Do you export from the Viewport render?
So yeah, so when you go to the view and go to render viewport image, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, there's two methods. Like, if you want this look that we have constructed, you can just take a snapshot of that look right here. Viewport, we go to view, viewport render image. So this is a render is saved out. So what you can do from here is image, save as, and save it somewhere as a PNG. So I'll save it out in the folder, save, and I'll open it. I'll show you what it looks like. Right here. So it's saved out a PNG. I open it over here. There we go. So that's the render. It saved it out as a PNG. Like I said, unfortunately, the gray background comes with it. There's no alpha unless you want to do the other way that I was talking about, where you have to render it out. But then you have to set up the skybox, and it's not gonna look exactly like what you're seeing, which is, one of the downfalls I feel like for Blender a little bit, because Blender can maybe eventually make it so that what you see is what you get, but this is the closest I've gotten to that so far. Maybe there is a way to render out alpha or the transparency in the background with the pen, but hey, we got most of the way there, and possibly in Photoshop we can just select the gray and cut it out and mask it, and we can get most of the way there.
Yeah, maybe when we do another stream, we probably would have figured out how to do that after researching it more. Because like Blender is not his forte. Like,
no, this is me learning as I go.
Yeah, so all of it, so Hubby is a motion designer, videographer, and does 3D rendering primarily using Cinema 4D and After Effects and Adobe Premiere. So Blender is something that he's learning more so now, because one, it's free, and two, it's free for everybody else. So it's a really great learning opportunity for like learning how to do pins and stuff, especially because this is like one of the more simpler type of rendering that you can do in there, where it's generally a flat, not like full on character modeling or anything.
Yeah, it's just generally you're just extruding line work route. You can do this with even what's it called, those charms, what are they called?
Acrylic charms?
Yeah, acrylic charms. Yeah, so you could do that. You could do even stickers, stack of stickers. And what else? Some stickers are holographic. You can do holographic textures. You can do metallic reflections and such inside of here. But it's maybe for not for stickers. Enamel pins makes more sense.
So,
Yeah, so I'm recording this stream right now. Oh, thank you, Tiltika. I'm just trying. Yeah, so I'm recording this whole thing right now, so hopefully it'll save out correctly, and we'll post it somewhere, maybe on IGTV. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, you can do IGTV. It's long form, possibly.
Yeah. The only thing well, I guess they'll just have to hold the phone sideways.
It's okay. You can rotate the phone. It's okay. It's all right. It won't hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, well.
But yeah, I could put it on YouTube as well. If you have a YouTube channel that does nothing on it, so they could live there, possibly.
Yeah. So like, what we're hoping to do with like Twitch streaming, because like we both have like full-time jobs, so we'll try to figure out like a schedule for us. But our goal is to kind of like do a series like on helpful like software tips. Like we're doing Illustrator and doing stuff in Blender. I'm currently learning Illustrator on iPad right now, so I'm for like new designs. So I'm hoping that eventually I can like show that process as well. So we'll have that, and also like it's a way of like us showcasing like upcoming designs, because I know that we don't really show process in like previews very much, just because there's just so much time in between. But I hope like we can use Twitch for doing this, because it's really fun like having people learn along with us and kind of seeing all the work that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, Affinity Designer is a good one. I've used that a little bit.
Yeah, like I was using Affinity Designer for a little bit, and then Illustrator on iPad came out, and I like both, but for different reasons. So I'm still learning Affinity. I like that it's like one price and not like a subscription. We just happen to have an Adobe like subscription still, so that's why I'm learning it. I will say that the UI on Illustrator is a lot more simplified. Like I feel like you're getting a full-on program with Affinity Designer on iPad. So honestly, it felt a little overwhelming because like the names and like the icons are just different than what I'm used to for some of this stuff. But I will say that the Illustrator one, like, there's a bit of a learning curve to it, but I like how it like smooths out lines and things like that. Like it tries to simplify your art as much as possible, which is really good for enamel pens. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if Affinity can do that yet, but I'm basically bouncing in between the two at the moment. So just a photographer note, if anyone is setting the camera in their scene and it looks super wide and I'm guessing low, change the focal length to 50mm and then zoom the camera setting down.
Yeah, that's a good tip. That's a good tip. It makes it look flatter. Yeah.
Yeah, and tested out the Illustrator at one time.
I'll show that real quick. What Teal Teacup's talking about.
Okay.
So in the camera setting, right here, there's a focal length for the camera. If you change it to be really small, but then zoom in, it looks really wide, like it's wide angle lens on your cell phone. But if you zoom back out and make this focal length higher, it looks like a long lens basically in real life, where it's flatter rather than wider. So telephoto in telephone or smartphone terms, telephoto versus wide angle. So yeah, things to play around with. It's really easy software to get into. You just have to, watch a few YouTube videos like I did, and get some tips and tricks. Right?
Yeah. And you can use this YouTube video version.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess this is the end of the stream. Right? Is there anything else we want to talk about?
No. You gotta call your mom back.
Yes.
So yeah, this is definitely a good stopping point. Well, we'll figure out like a schedule and like plans. So I basically back here. I've been working on the design in Illustrator on iPad. So what I'm gonna do is put it on the computer so I can like start printing it out to scale and making sure I got my lines the way they are. And if I make a mistake, I'll purposely save out that version so we can show like basically the spaghetti that kind of happens when there's like unclosed lines and stuff in Illustrator. I mean, not in Illustrator, in like in Blender. But we don't know how Blender will necessarily handle it yet because it happens in Cinema 4D, where basically it just looks like really jumbly. So yeah, so I'll try to like purposely mess it up somewhere while I'm trying to finalize it, this design. Um, so that way we can show like troubleshooting for art. So because like last time, I try to show like while I'm doing stuff in Illustrator that I'm purposely trying to smooth out some of the lines and simplifying it and looking for like clusters of points that make no sense, which usually those translate to like the metal being like rough in certain areas sometimes. So I'll try to like do some of that cleaning up process live again, so that way it will make more sense when we put it into Blender.
Yeah. And and of course, like we said before, I'll be learning more about Blender as time goes on. Maybe we'll do another session and go through a process similar to this again.
Yeah. So I hope everyone got to walk away or will walk away with some new 3D renderings of your pins that you can share.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all for sticking it out with us for because this has been a pretty long stream, but
Yes.
yeah, but I'm glad that you learned a lot.
Yeah, and also if you have any questions, reply to the posts that we made just yesterday, and I'll try to answer those questions too, or reply to this. I think you can do comments on this. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, but
either
maybe
way, do it on Instagram so that way stuff gets boosted.
Yeah, maybe just to that post, the 3D post.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you have any questions at all, so yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Take care.